Coming to Radio Flange Goblet in the fall, it's Nobody Puts BB in a Corner. Broadway actress and ex-wife to that enormously headed pompous brain shrinker Frasier Crane, BB Newworth, hosts a show where various gangs of construction workers attempt to somehow put her in a corner, but she fights them off with sticks, her handbag, and her innate panther-like fighting ability, which was said to have totally decimated David Hyde Pierce's shins while ordering Thai salad at a Latvian buffet. Following that on Tuesday nights, it's Diane Yeast. Basically, it's a lot like Diane Weist, only it isn't. It's Diane Yeast. They're still working this shit out at a boardroom level. And finally, coming to Saturday nights, it's Sigourney Weaver. Australian host of a once popular sheep shearing and giant spider killing show from down under travels the world saying "Strafe" and "Sigourney Weaver" at stuff he doesn't understand fully. Sigourney Weaver? Is that a giant pretzel? Madness. Struth, you Dutch sure do love windmills. Gerard Depardieu, this fried egg is fucking delicious. Also coming in the fall, it's Horrotober over at the After Movie Diner.
I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
They will say that I have shed innocent blood. What's blood for, if not for shedding?
There is nothing to worry about. You're gonna be just fine.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
I like to dissect girls. Did you know I'm utterly insane?
Have you checked the children?
Stay on the road. Keep clear to the moors.
Beware the moonlets.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes.
Who's laughing now?
It's the After Movie Diner and a month of October, and they're watching horror films. That's why they call it Horrotober. Yeah, it's the After Movie Diner in the month of October. They're watching horror films. That's why they call it Horrotober. 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 A Horrotober, a Horrotober. Good even thigh, boys and ghouls, for this first episode of Horrotober on the After Movie Diner. And wow, have we got some bone-shattering, knee-knocking, pants-soiling, and scream-inducing horror films over the next 5 weeks for you. Close? Yes, master. Did you throw the bones about and cake the walls with goo? Yes, master. Did you stick the severed heads of Piers Morgan, Gordon Ramsay, and Shania Twain on spikes outside the castle gates? Yes, master. But why did Shania have to die? The other two I understand. But surely the Twainster is no longer a threat to modern civilization? Are you arguing with me, Klaus? No, sir. Because it sounds very much like you're arguing with me. Sorry, sir. You will be. I will flog you later. Promises. Right, promises. Now, did you get out the old reel-to-reel tape recorder? Yes, sir. Well, let's not leave the zombie hordes waiting. And roll tape. Okay. Here comes the postman. I wonder what he has for me. Is there something in his big brown sack? I wonder what could it be? hope the bills it lacks and instead brings me some listener feedback, or maybe, just maybe, a big bag of crack. Oh, here comes the postman, I wonder what he has for me. Yep, that's right. We did receive a piece of mail, and as we have been asking people to write in, once people write in, I can hardly not read this out, could I? This is a wonderful email from none other than Charles, or Charlie, Roxburgh, the director of the awesome Slingshot Cops, which, by the way, is on Amazon Prime. If you want to see a film in which I star, okay, I'm not the star, I've just had a little cameo, but if you want to see a film in which I'm in, and lots of other awesome, great, funny actors are in, a super buddy comedy, supernatural horror funny thing. Anyway, it's awesome, it's independent, it's great, it's got Matt Farley, Charlie Roxburgh, me, Tom Scalzo, Jim Wallace, co-host of the After Movie Done, loads of great people in it, and it's up on Amazon Prime right now in the US and the UK. Go watch Slingshot Cops and support indie filmmaking. Anyway, with that plug out of the way, here is Charles's, or Charlie's, email. He writes, "Hey John, I enjoyed the Blade Runner episode. I laughed when Jim said the dove was such a bad idea and appreciated your ideas for a more simple plot. You guys had an open-minded take and I share many of your opinions. Also, I thought Jim was going to order the chamomile tea, but he opted for English breakfast. I was surprised. Then, when they didn't have that, Earl Grey was the tea of choice. Luckily, he was agreeable. Such tea-related suspense. Thanks, Charlie." So, there we go. Thanks ever so much for writing, Charlie, and I do hope everyone listening follows suit and sends us some mail. And now, over to a diner on the Upper East Side for some scary conversations. Well, hello indeed.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, 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 hello. It's the After Movie Diner.
Yep.
What was it? It's the After Movie Diner. It's after a movie and we're in a diner.
Both of those things
are true. Yes, welcome to the After Movie Diner. This week, the first week of Horrotober.
Horrotober. Sponsored by bad Billy Connolly impressions.
Sponsored by bad Scottish accents in a New York diner. Hello. What's the first episode
We're doing the whole episode.
Horrotober. Horrotober.
Should we try and do the whole episode?
No, let's not.
Terrible Scottish accents.
Let's not do that because we might offend some terrible Scotsmen.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, Horrotober, and it's very exciting.
Very.
Very, very exciting.
Very.
We begin our odyssey. Let's call it an odyssey. But really, it's just going to be a podcast.
It's more of a potter.
More of a potter. A stumble. A shamble.
Homer's the Potter.
A shamble.
Yeah, a shamble, yes.
Homer's the Shamble. Through the world of horror over the next 5 weeks.
Oh, 5, all right.
Well, because
How many of those am I involved in? I'm involved in 2, right?
At least 2, if not 3.
Okay. Oh, because you haven't figured out what... Because I know there's the
fifth one.
There's the baseball one, right?
There's a baseball one. There's a Jack the Ripper one.
Right.
There's our Suspiria one. There's this one, and then there's a fifth one. And another.
Mystery.
But it's 5 because we released a podcast on a Monday, and I believe like the 30th of October is a Monday. So I think I can squeeze in a 5th one. I think that's how it works.
Yes. The 30th is a Monday.
But I would like to remind everyone listening, because I did it at the end of the show last week, and I figured that I should probably do it at the beginning of the show.
Right.
So, if you like the podcast, why not contact us? There are lots of ways you can contact us. Email, telephone, and internet. Email is hello@aftermoviediner.com.
I feel like they're not going to be listening because you're singing.
No, because I'm singing.
Do you know what I mean? It's
yeah.
They know there's information there.
Yeah, but they'll just
get it wrong.
He's singing again. Let's wait till he's finished singing, and then maybe we can carry on. Okay, so here we go then. Email us at Email us.
Just email us.
Just email us at hello@aftermoviediner.com. Call us at 347-669-0053,
or use the internet voicemail speakpipe.com/aftermoviediner, or just head over to aftermoviediner.com.
Well, here's the thing, right?
And
he
hit
will
contact.
absolutely play your message, whatever it is.
absolutely
Even
do,
if
yeah.
all it is blow your nose,
Actually-
he will say,
Actually, call me up and blow my nose.
Steve from Stevenage. Sorry about that, Steve.
Jeff from Jefftown has contacted us, and
he just wanted to say,
blow his nose. Well, thank you ever so much.
Thanks, Jeff.
Jeff from Jefftown. And
typical Jeff wisdom from Jeff there.
Going up to Jeff's wife, Jeffina. Here is
always a satisfied woman.
The Bay City Rollers.
Wait, when did you become a 70s radio station?
When we started to talk about Jeff and Jeffina. Jeff had this to say. Bye bye baby, baby goodbye.
Wait, is that Bay City Rollers, Jim?
Yeah.
Because I don't actually know any, but now I do.
A few more minutes. Hey, a few more minutes?
Do we need a few more minutes?
No.
No, okay.
You go ahead and
okay.
I'll...
I'm going to get the Santa Fe chicken wrap and English breakfast tea
English breakfast, yes, okay.
with milk.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
And I'm going to go for what I feel like I always go for at this time. I'm going to go for 2 eggs over easy. With ham, please.
Okay, with ham. Okay.
And can I get that instead of with the home fries? Can I get that with French fries, please?
No problem. French fries. Okay. Regular toast?
Right, please.
Regular, okay.
Thank you so much.
Something to drink for you?
Something
to drink?
Water is
Okay.
perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Because when I can't think of what to have at a diner, I don't know if the listeners, the frequent listeners, have figured this out. But when I...
thank you.
Immediately arove. Arove? It immediately arroved. I don't know why I'm saying it.
Oh, Devonshire English breakfast.
Oh, lovely, Devonshire. I guarantee that tea has never
Nowhere
been
near
near Devon. In fact, maybe...
Made by Colorado. So...
No.
Not really Devonshire, is it?
No. I would hasten to guess the closest that's ever been.
Jeff, can you find me a place? Listen, it's for the tea bags, mate. Can you find what's a place in England that sounds nice?
Yeah. Well, Devonshire, clotted cream and tea, afternoon tea and all that. Right?
No, I get it.
That's
I'm
the
just
thing.
saying, like, it's got nothing
That's
to
the
do
thing.
with...
No,
Yes,
it's from Colorado. From Colorado.
Colorado.
Jeff from Colorado.
Jeff.
No one says Colorado, but I like in an American accent
They should say
saying
Colorado. They
I don't know why. Because there's that song, The Streets of Laredo, and I don't know why I've
Streets
suddenly...
of Colorado.
No, it's The Streets of Laredo.
It's
I'm
also
just
the
saying.
computer game in Red Dwarf 6. Streets. Oh no, is that Guns of Laredo? I can't remember. That's the
Guns
game
of Navarone.
That's a different town.
What were we saying though? Contact us.
We
send
were
us
just
stuff.
telling people to call because you will absolutely, you will read other emails.
I will absolutely do anything
Like,
they
I mean,
do.
here we are, right? We're
Right.
living in a world where if somebody posts,
Yeah.
we're living in a world where somebody posts something on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that knees are overrated.
Right.
And then if you get like 12 likes, you're like, yes, I nailed it. I nailed the knees comment. 12 double figures on the likes,
Yeah.
right?
Who would
Whereas,
have thought that everyone would have agreed with me?
if you
about
wrote
me?
to After Movie Diner, right, and said, I think knees are overrated,
Yeah.
you go, Jeff from Jefftown says knees are overrated. And then you'd have like, well, I don't want to like, but more than 12 people would hear that.
At least 15.
Right? And you get to
people
go,
would
hey,
hear
did you hear my knees comment on the After Movie Diner podcast? And you could link to it, and then people would hear your thing. There's like and it's literally just, it's the same as writing knees are overrated on your Facebook page.
Yeah.
But instead of your Facebook page, you write it on the After Movie Diner Facebook page. It's the same effort.
Right.
Right? But
Yeah.
more people hear your knees comment.
More people
So
hear your
what
knees.
is wrong with you?
Why wouldn't you
that
do
you're
that?
not doing that?
See, Jim Wallace,
You
yet
knee
again.
maniac.
It happens.
You maniac.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, it's amazing. Now, it's very rare, but occasionally Jim makes a salient point. And I feel like that's one of those lightning strikes.
Yeah.
I tell you what, you have succeeded. You
I'm
should
not going to
probably
say
just
anything
shut
else
up.
because everything else is the rest of the podcast. Well, that is it.
Yeah, that's
Unless there's some more speculation to be made.
Because not only did you make a salient point, but then you also came up with a pun. And
I did.
That's quite rare.
Salient point followed by pun. That is a win for me.
Yeah, I would
That
just,
is a
I would
podcast
honestly,
win.
I would honestly leave right now.
Yeah, should we say
I think
we just
that
end the
rallying
podcast,
the rest
actually?
of the time is just useless. A bit like your face.
Yeah. Actually, it is.
It
is useless.
It is useless because it's never been used for anything that benefits anyone else other than you.
Yeah. You know that song? You were just facing the crowd, right? I was the face next to that.
You were.
I'm so unimportant, and it wasn't even used as a generic example of genericness.
Right. Now,
because in order for there to be a crowd, there has to be more than one face.
More than one face.
And he's specifically singing to
as someone whose face that has meant
crowd.
something to him. Whereas you're like the
standing
person,
out from all the bland nonsense faces all around. Which I am one.
Well, you're probably one, but I would say you're probably the face next to the face. That's next to the face in the crowd.
I'm not even in Tom's vision.
You're probably 3 faces down.
Yeah, actually, it's a crowd. The crowd probably couldn't be encompassed by Tom Petty's vision, right? So there's actually members of the crowd that aren't even in his peripheral vision, and that's very much where I live.
Just a face next to the face. Next to the face.
Next to the crowd.
In the crowd.
At the back of the crowd. Out of my vision.
Even if I turn or stand on a box. You're barely in view. Well, thank you very much, Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Tom.
Look at that, that's wonderful.
I feel much better.
You're on a roll tonight, which is quite pleasurable and warm.
A warm roll.
Which I'm enjoying. I'm enjoying a lot. So yes, first episode of Horrotober. Please, Horrotober! Please do write to us and tell us what you think so far. I think we're on to...
It's happened yet. We haven't done it. It's not like a live tweet thing, is it? How are we doing so far?
It should be.
Get on with the bloody movie.
Get on with it.
What was the movie?
What was the movie?
At Jeff. Oh, I'm sorry, right.
At Jeff.com.
The movie was...
Wait a minute, was it at Jeff, like at Jeff at Jeff.com, or was it Jeff at Jeff.com? But you
no, it was like
Twitter,
the Twitter handle at Jeff.
Oh, at Jeff.
At Jeff.
At Jeff. I should probably get that.
Because he was the first Twitter user.
Jeff was?
At Jeff, yeah.
At Jeff.
Jeff.
Jeffina, weirdly enough, was third.
Yeah.
Stephen Fry just slipped in there between the two.
She does not like to talk about it.
No, she doesn't like to talk about it at all.
By it, we mean sex. We mean porking.
By it, we mean knees, which she feels quite overrated. She's a maniac on the interwebs. So Jim, why don't you just say the name of the bloody movie and let's get on with the Funhouse. Or Tobe Hooper's The Funhouse. Tobe Hooper's The Funhouse is...
And Tobe is short for Toby.
No, Tobitha. It's like...
this is Tobe. Tobes, I've heard.
Tobes, you've heard.
Like, nobody calls Tobes Tobe, do they?
No.
Do you think when he was like high school or like
but do you think
college, you go, it's Tobe, actually?
No, I think... But is it pronounced Toby, but spelt Tobe?
I'd always thought it was Tobe Hooper. Maybe you're right. I mean, it's the sort of thing an American would do, isn't it?
Well, no, it's the sort of thing some people would do. Let's not narrow it down to just a minute. Oh. My goodness, look at that rap.
Wow, thank you very much.
I'll tell you what, I've seen some raps in my time, and that's a rap right there.
Oh,
thank you so much. Thank you. Better not bring that onto a film set because someone would shout, "That's a rap," and everyone would go home. And you'd be like, "Wait a minute, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm having my breakfast, and everyone's left." I've gone, "That's a rap" because it's quite an impressive rap, and everyone thinks I'm closing the set for the day.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I think my joke has gone nowhere. So
I liked it. I was just concentrating on my rap.
I'm trying to win back the podcast after you've won the podcast with your knee.
Oh, you're going to win it, mate.
I don't know that
I'm going to speculate wildly, and you're going to give reasoned criticism.
Well, I tell you what, before we do anything, I am going to quickly, I just want to look up where this comes in old Tobe or Toby, either one is available, Hooper's filmography.
Well, Texas, it's 81, right? So when did Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Late 70s?
Hang on, I don't know if they can hear you.
I was eating my wraps, I wasn't paying as much attention as I could have.
It's a wrap. Everyone come back, he was just talking about his breakfast. Alright, so Texas Chainsaw Massacre is 1974, Eaten Alive is 1976, The Dark, which is uncredited, is 1979, Salem's Lot, the TV movie, is 1979, The Funhouse is 1981. And it is the movie...
Salem's Lot did quite well, didn't it? Even though it's a TV movie.
It did. No, Salem's Lot is remembered fondly.
I don't think I've ever seen it.
And the Funhouse...
That's James Mason, right? I feel like an old 70s Stephen King miniseries starring James Mason is absolutely something that I should have seen.
Yeah, well, we both should have seen it. I've seen it like a long time ago. I've also seen the bizarre Donald Sutherland and Rob Lowe remake, which is about as interesting as that sounds.
Donald Sutherland, though.
The Funhouse comes out in 1981 before Poltergeist. He makes Poltergeist the next year.
Wow, so he followed... This is in between Salem's Lot and Poltergeist.
And so obviously Tobe or Toby, I will be interchanging them much like my pants throughout the show. But Tobe Hooper made, obviously recently, passed away.
He made nothing recently.
Made nothing recently because he fucking died. He just up and died. No, it's genuinely tragic. That Romero and Hooper, two of the masters of horror, so-called self-dubbed masters of horror,
didn't somebody else
shuffled off this mortal coil this year?
Yeah, didn't somebody else?
Very tragic. Genuinely, jokes notwithstanding.
Somebody else kicked the bucket as well.
Well, plenty of other people have died this year, but they're the two masters of horror.
Okay. I thought there was a third master of horror.
Because Landis is still alive, Garris is still alive, Carpenter is still alive, Coscarelli is still alive, Gordon is still alive. Gordon's alive!
I thought you slipped in the pun before I realised you did mean Stuart Gordon.
Stuart Gordon. Stewie Gords.
The Gordster.
The Gordster.
The Gord monster.
Dario Argento's still alive. So yeah, I think it's just Tobes and...
Right.
The Hoop.
Is there... Okay, so let me ask you a quick question.
The Hoop Man.
Let me ask you a question. I think this is relevant. Well, I mean, it is relevant specifically to this movie. Do you feel that after the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Tobe Hooper lived up to his early promise?
Well, it depends how much promise you think the Texas Chainsaw Massacre
I think it scared the shit out of
it did.
The
No.
entire world.
I think
in a new and extremely troubling way.
I think that...
But of all the other things I've seen, I've never seen him close to recapturing that nightmarish intensity.
Well, it's difficult to... I mean, okay, so this is going off on a tangent a bit, but before we even start...
The reason I say it's relevant is it's not that I think that the Funhouse is bad, but I think it was a bit disappointing.
Well, I've got some theories and some things I want to say about the Funhouse, but yes, I know what you mean. You didn't watch it and go, oh my goodness, this was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, my big problem with it wasn't scary or gory, so I was a bit like I'd expect Tobe to do one. Like, Poltergeist I do like, and I think it is quite scary, and it's not gory. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is gory and scary.
It's not gory. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is not gory at all.
Is it not?
Not really. I mean...
In my memory, it's extremely gory.
No. The original, you don't even... You see a hung on a meat hook, but you don't see any blood. Okay. You see him, the chainsaw go into the kid in the wheelchair's stomach, but you don't see any blood because it's at night. It's grotesque because you've got the family around the table, with bones and sort of viscera on their plates and stuff. But it only really gets gory in the very last sequence where she's running away and he... But even when he gets the chainsaw in his leg, it's not blood spurts everywhere. It's just
Yeah, okay. I mean, I do think you and I, given that you've seen quite a lot of Herschel Gordon Lewis and stuff, you and I do have a different definition of gore. You know what I mean? As in, what can be achieved.
Right, but the thing is that Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, what is known about them is that they are relatively, despite showing very kind of gruesome acts, they're relatively free of gore. Whereas something like a Friday the 13th, which looks at Halloween and goes, well, we can do that, but how do we up the ante? They go, well, we'll do it, but we'll add special effects.
Oh, well, then
we'll bring Tom Savini in and we'll get a few like gore effects. So like I always think of sort of the first like truly gory slasher as something like Friday the 13th.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so but either way, I was expecting, I don't know, to be like at least a little bit scared or freaked out by Funhouse. By the way, just one of the things I like about America is if you ordered a wrap in England with chicken, rice and grilled vegetables, you'd expect
to get two old men who show up in cloth caps and start rhyming a lot.
I'm not sure I understand.
All right, carry on.
I'm saying if you got that in England, it would be mostly rice.
Right.
Quite a few chunky grilled vegetables, but a bit underdone, and maybe 3 bits of chicken.
Yeah.
And this one, it's nearly all chicken.
Right.
I wish there was more rice.
Right.
And I was not expecting to think that. There we go.
Okay.
Capsule food review.
Anyway, my ham, egg and chips, for anyone who cares, are lovely.
Oh, good. So do you want to talk about the movie more generally?
No, I do. But
the
Tobe Hoop thing, I was going to say, the reason where this film came from was that obviously when the Hoop Man passed away, there's not only lots of talk about obviously sort of why he was considered sort of revolutionary and the influence that something like Texas Chainsaw Massacre had on horror in general. Although I think you can kind of trace that actually back to like Night of the Living Dead. It's sort of like if Night doesn't happen, then Texas Chainsaw doesn't happen, and if Texas Chainsaw doesn't happen, then like Halloween and some of the others. So it's kind of like a lineage thing. But he definitely did that. This feels like a documentary, or this feels like a film I shouldn't be watching because it feels like a home movie or something. Well, that kind of cinema verite thing. So there's a lot talked about that post his death. There was also a lot talked about the whole Poltergeist, Spielberg, Hooper. Did Spielberg really direct it? Blah 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 blah. And there was articles written, and in fact, someone who was close to Tobe Hooper, Mick Garris, who hosts the Postmortem podcast and has directed quite a lot of Stephen King's miniseries and stuff.
Yeah, he did The Stand, so I've always liked him.
He wrote, Steven Spielberg being who he is, a very hands-on producer, blah, 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 blah. Of course, he worked in tandem with Tobe Hooper, but if you watch Tobe's other films, you can totally see his hand in Poltergeist. To say that he is nowhere to be seen in that film is ridiculous. Like, it's clearly his work as much as it is Spielberg's and da-da-da-da. So lots of people wrote about that.
Right.
And then I saw a couple of things about Funhouse that just kind of stuck in my head where I was like, oh yeah, okay, he did that. Like, I just had to kind of remind myself.
Okay.
And then when I was trying to put together a list of some stuff that I might want to watch during Horrotober, I was looking at a few lists online of sort of, 80s and 90s horror films you may have forgotten about, or, the top 50 80s and 90s horror films that aren't, The Thing or whatever. Or, Nightmare on Elm Street. And the Funhouse was on that list. In fact, it was on sort of 2 or 3 of those lists. And I knew there'd been a special edition Blu-ray and yada yada yada. So I was like, okay, so here's a chain of events. Like, sadly, the Hoop Man passes away. It would be very predictable to kind of talk about him in regards of his well-known work, Salem's Lot, Texas Chainsaw, Poltergeist. And we can certainly talk about those things. And even Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which in a sort of Halloween 3 type way has gained a big sort of cult following over the years. And in fact, like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is sort of as kind of glossy and 80s and kind of funky and funny and weird as sort of Tobe Hooper gets, really. But despite, I know, like, our lukewarm feelings overall towards the Funhouse, I'm actually really glad we watched it, because I feel that more than anything, it kind of made me see, and what actually made me enjoy it more was started to see the kind of, without wanting to sound too flowery and pretentious, but with actually starting to see some of the themes that clearly drew Tobe Hooper to, like, certain horror films. Like, because you know, the idea of sort of disfigurement, family, you know, the carny lifestyle, the people on the fringe of society. You know, there's lots of parallels to the Texas Chainsaw family. You know, the whole thing about the Texas Chainsaw films is, you know, the Saw is family and blah, 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 blah. And, you know, certainly the first and second one have the same actors portraying the different family members and da-da-da-da-da, you know. And, you know, they're talking about, you know, the one member of the family that despite being sort of mentally unstable or disfigured or whatever it is, you kind of protect at all costs and things like that. And those things appear again in the Funhouse, along with not too much, but certainly a little bit of sort of religious undertones.
Really?
Yeah, just in terms of like the constant mention of the deformed animals being like God's creation, the fact that the old woman in the bathroom is like God is watching you. There's just like a lot of ideas of if there is this religion out there, like, or if there is this creator out there, like, what has he created, kind of thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's kind of interesting.
And to top it all off, not only do you have the grotesque Carney family, but you have the family that our protagonist belongs to, where the father is a very like soft-spoken, you know, put-upon guy, and the mother is an alcoholic. And although it's never really commented on, you see her drinking whiskey before they all go out, and then later when she comes to pick up the boy at the theme park, she's very clearly disinterested and drunk, like clearly. But it's a very subtle comment. Like at no point does Tobe Hooper go, "These people are grotesque and awful, by the way, as well."
Right.
Like it's just in there. So I think what I found from the Funhouse was that as it went on, you know, because I, like you, definitely there was a period of time during the first, because really nothing happens until like 45 minutes into the film. And there was certainly periods of that time where I was like, you know, God, this is really dragging for an hour and a half film. This really feels very long and slow. But it wasn't until I said, well, why is he doing that? And why is that the story he's telling? And why is it being set up that way? And, you know, why were films of that era like paced differently? And, you know, why were those scenes in there? And I started to kind of think about that and started to think about like why certain things were placed in there and what themes would run through it. And I just started to kind of see this, these little like nods to various different things kind of emerge.
Right.
And then come the 45 minute or 49 minute mark, once all hell breaks loose, it then becomes more of just your typical kind of monster on the loose. And actually the last 45 minutes plays very similar to the last 45 minutes of Texas Chainsaw, where essentially someone is screaming almost constantly. And there are monsters, both human and otherwise, like on the loose, chasing the people. So, do you want to quickly run through what plot there is, just to quickly like put all that, what I just said, in context?
Basically, 4 teenagers go to a carnival. It's a double date. One of them is an established couple, one of them is like their first date. And the girl on the first date is sort of the main character, in that she's involved in a psycho Halloween deliberate rip-off at the beginning of the movie, when her young brother kind of attacks her in the shower. So she's the one we're following. So the 14...
Well, her young brother is clearly into horror movies.
Right. So the 14 go to the carnival, and then they just kind of like experience the carnival for like half an hour.
All the different aspects of it.
Yeah. Right. And it's very, you know, it almost feels like a, like the vibe I got from it was Tobe Hooper thinking, I'm not sure how long these kind of things are going to be around. I loved these things when I was a kid. I'm going to record this experience, the experience of being at a carnival, you know, for posterity almost. So that happens for a bit. And then they decide to spend the night, not really on a dare exactly, but more because they both want to, the two blokes want to get their end away with the chicks. And the only way to do that is to, you know, have them stay away from home for a night. So they decide to stay in the Funhouse, where they do proceed to get jiggy, is I believe what the kids are saying these days, right?
I think the kids were saying that in 1994.
Right, well that's when I last paid attention.
Right, to kids.
To kids. To what's cool.
Right.
So I'm very much a baggy trousers and Will Smith kind of a man.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
Anyway, so they spend the night in the Funhouse, and while they're in the Funhouse, they witness the stumbling, clearly not right, Funhouse ride assistant murder the fortune teller, and they kind of get caught, basically. They find out that they're there, and then the rest of the movie is the fucked up assistant, physically deformed ride assistant, chasing them around the Funhouse
with his dad.
His
normal dad. His normal looking dad, anyway.
Stopping them from getting out and telling everybody what they're saying.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, because the Funhouse essentially is the ghost ride, the haunted house.
Ghost train.
Ghost train, right. And you know, I think what you were saying about him wanting to like record the place for posterity was definitely part of it. I think that there was also this idea of sort of building up atmosphere. He tries to, throughout that sort of 30-minute period of them being at the fun fair and going to various places, he tries to heighten the sort of unease of it, because there is that very kind of otherworldly thing where you have, and I've been to them, not so much carnivals like this, but certainly fun fairs where they have rides. Because I mean, I think the things like freak shows and, you know, deformed animals and even palm reading and stuff like that has sort of fallen by the wayside. But there are definitely still carnivals where you can go and there's, you know, dodgems and rides and Ferris wheels and, you know, spray the water at the mouth and make the balloon pop or whatever. Like, there's still that stuff in the world. So I've definitely had that experience. And it's sort of very otherworldly. You're out in the middle of a field, there's bright lights, but it's dark at night. All the machinery is a bit
I think a lot of it as well, in particularly in American, because I think like the Carnival, the Fun Fair is a big part of, you know, the American experience. I think a lot of that is there's a lot of small towns in America, but that are sort of independently kind of wealthy in their own way. You know what I mean? Like there's money to burn there, with not a lot of money to, you know, back in the day, in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, you know, not a lot to do in those towns. And so I would think that for a teenager growing up in a town like that, that it would be, and I think what it's supposed to be, it's supposed to be like a window into the strangeness of the world. You know, that they've been brought up in this very staid, you know, suburban existence of everything is very controlled and it's boring for them. And what they long for is strangeness and oddness and, you know, the weirdness of the world. I think that's what it's supposed to be. It's exciting and cheap. And
once I realised that section of the film was going to kind of be going on, the thing that I thought he did very well to kind of keep you interested, or certainly kept me interested, was showing the authentic-looking faces of the carnies and the barkers and those kind of people, to get some of that patter and sales barking and all that kind of stuff that they do to kind of get people on the rides, like in this sort of very eerie way, which I really enjoyed. You know, everyone was a character without clearly going, oh look, isn't he a character? They just seemed very authentic. or certainly authentic as the sort of myth of the kind of 50s carnival is in your head, the evocative idea of carnies and gypsies and that kind of thing. And whether it's the fact that her as the main character, the protagonist, and I forget her name off the top of my head.
She was very deliberately.
But as she walked around, it was almost like they were talking to her and calling her out, and she kept having these moments where she was sort of both transfixed and horrified by like what was going on.
She was a very kind of Laurie Strode kind of character, right? She was a very, not exactly plain, but she wasn't a glamorous, blonde, seen it all, whatever kind of character. She was supposed to be naive and, like you say, like they were talking to her because she is... Are they like killing plastic elephants in the back or something?
I think so.
So that was kind of interesting too, like that shot. There's no way... Yeah, I'm all done. Thanks very much. Thank you. There's no way that, you make that film now, you cast that same girl, that same character. You know what I mean? Which I think was kind of cool, and also that a lot of the carnival experience did feel authentic. It didn't feel like
this is what
postmodern, ironic view of it. It felt like I like the joke where they're showing the girl out the front, going, "I've got more girls like this inside," and she's kind of young and quite good looking in a bikini, and then when you actually see the inside of the tent, they're all mid-50s. Old slappers, basically.
Right.
Not in a bad way, but like that's, and I imagine that's what that experience would be. Like you pay the money and you go in, and it would be a very different,
Right. No, I liked it. And like when the magician
when the magician was very creepy and weird.
When the magician was doing his thing, you hear someone in the back like, "Get a day job," and stuff like that. Like it was.
Yeah.
But not only that. So I was gonna. That's a really good point, and that's reminded me of something else I wanted to say about the film was that, again, with Tobe Hooper, to bring it back to him again, he makes his bones in a movie that has no stars and seems very authentic. It seems very, like we said, cinema verite or like home movie or whatever. And what's interesting is even though this is quite a few movies in, and even though there's a big fantasy element to this, which is the deformed guy, like, because he's not just deformed, he's like properly, unnatural and weird and whatever.
He's a proper monster.
He's a proper monster. It's not just like nose all over his face, he's like properly weird. And despite that element, everyone else, and there aren't any real names in it. It's not like anyone from this movie went on to become like big.
No, I didn't recognize
although Sylvia Miles' name rings a bell for some reason.
Yeah, me too. I saw that on the thing.
But like in general, there wasn't anyone in this movie. This isn't one of these before they were famous. Susan Sarandon or Linda Hamilton or whatever showed up in this movie. Like there's no one famous in it. No one became famous from it, and it therefore, even after all these years, smacks of authenticity, and it definitely weirdly kind of like adds something to it, despite the fact that, unlike Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is shot very kind of like rough and ready, there is definitely deliberate filmmaking going on here. Like there are long sweeping shots. There's that amazing crane shot of the little kid walking through the carnival, which is amazing, that like pulls up from the little kid and then goes back and back and back. Like, there's a little bit of Spielbergian lens flare creeping in. There's a lot of the shots are very kind of static and long, far away shots, and it's or framed deliberately. So although there is this authenticity going on, and there are these faces that you would only really see if you kind of populated it with locals, and I don't know where this was shot, but like they look very like local kind of people. It's juxtaposed with the fact that at this point, his filmmaking is far more deliberate and filmic, and rather than rough and ready. I would say it's like pretty beautifully filmed. I really did like a lot of it in terms of the way it was filmed, and I did like the authenticity, and I did like the getting to know the carnival, and I think that multiple things are happening there. Like I said, you're getting to like know the carnival, but you're also getting to know that like these people who work there, these little characters, these weird people, these people on the fringe of society. You know, later on he says you killed one of the family because like the monster kills the palm reader, the fortune teller, and he's like, you know, you killed one of the family. Like there's this. We don't see them traveling, but we get this sense of them moving from town to town, and we get the sense of them all being together and freaks together, and it's there as much the show as whatever their exhibit is, you know, a two-headed cow or whatever. The guy out the front with the ginger hair saying, "Come on in, alive, alive," like that guy is as fascinating to me as the two-headed cow, you know, and like what's his journey and da-da-da-da-da. So I found a way, although I know on the surface it was a long, drawn-out, boring, you know, montage of like 4 kids goofing off at a carnival, I found a way like to embrace that and enjoy that part of the film, despite it being slow.
So my thing is actually I didn't mind that. Like my problem is with the end of the movie. Like your problem is once it gets going. Once it gets going is my problem.
Okay, so what's your problem with?
So my problem is that you got all this authenticity, right?
Yeah.
And the yin yang.
Right.
And I really like that. I like that. Like, you know what? I'm never going to see one of these places unless it's like postmodern and ironic. Do you know what I mean? I'm never going to go to a small town in America and see something like this. And
well, it's reminding me of Malatesta's Carnival of Death.
Yeah. And it reminded me of the bit in Firefly when they go to the intergalactic, you know, carnival with the mutant cow and everything. And it reminded me of the Ray Bradbury story about the Carnival of Death that comes to town and kills people. And I was enjoying it. I was like, oh, okay, fair enough. I get it. They're going for that. You know, he wants to kind of film what it would be like to be at a carnival. I'm down with that. And if eventually, you know, they start getting picked off by a monster or whatever, that's cool. I'm down with that. I didn't mind the monster guy either. You know. I felt...
I think it actually would have been more effective for him to have kept his mask on.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, certainly one of like the worst bits of the whole movie in terms of like unnerving and disturbing was the one bit of drool that was coming out of the open hole in his mask, because it was like the suggestion of what must be happening underneath that mask was quite frightening.
That's what I mean.
And after that initial I always feel like it would have worked better as a Friday the 13th, like one shot deal at the end, you know what I mean? Like you get ripped off and you see it. Because the first time I saw the face, I was like, oh my god! And then every time I saw it after that, I was like, meh.
Right.
You know? And I get that you're going for the whole two-headed cow thing and all the rest of it. But anyway, my problem was I didn't think that the end of the movie had the courage of its convictions. At least in terms of there was a really neat idea there. There was a really neat idea in that end of. Like it almost felt like he'd once worked at a fun ride or at a fun house and was like, oh, I could do something here. Because all the bits that were really neat were the bits like, there's the bit underneath the floor where all the mechanisms are working.
That was awesome, yeah.
And there's the bits, you know, where you're like walking along where there's a car and where a car would normally go. And the sense of being lost, even though it's a relatively confined space. There's lots of things going on there. But instead of going, okay, well, I'm going to keep it real. I'm not going to make it like fantastical. I'm not going to Hollywood up and make it seem like it, you know, it's bigger than it really is, and make things happen that wouldn't really happen. I want to try and make it real, but it doesn't really use the space properly. I felt like sometimes it was downstairs, and then it was upstairs, and then it was over here, and then it was a bit like, well, yeah, I really want to do that, but I don't have a lot of space.
Right.
No, I'm all right for the moment.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, weirdly enough, spatially, it kind of reminded me like the end of Blade Runner.
Yeah,
like
I was
everyone
thinking,
was all over the fucking
I was
shop.
thinking that. It was a bit like, well, it's all very well setting it in this tight space, you know what I mean, and wanting it to be real and have that, but then like nowhere for me did it fall down more than in that final bit, in the final confrontation, where she's like trapped in this room and she's like making her way like underneath what should be like killer fast moving razor cables like close to the floor, but actually there's like 3 old ropes moving really slowly,
right,
that are like 3 feet.
Well, it was the cogs.
She was no, but I'm saying before that, when she's like climbing underneath.
Right, yeah.
The way she was climbing underneath him, it was clearly supposed to be like a dangerous thing she was doing, but it was in no way actually dangerous. And then right at the end, with the cogs that were supposed to be like interlocking, and then he's in the middle of them, and they're quite clearly not interlocking. Like they haven't cut them in half or anything.
Right.
There's all of a sudden a 1 foot gap in the middle where he's squeezed in the middle, and it was ridiculous. And before that, when he's being turned around again, clearly it's supposed to be, he wants it to be a tight enough space that she's trapped there, while he's moving very slowly around on the mechanism towards her, and she's powerless to stop it. Except that we can quite clearly see there's loads of places for her to walk off to and wander away.
I think it was more than she was like.
No, it wasn't.
Horrified and transfixed.
No, because she was like going, oh no, and then he like went very, very slowly past her. She's like, oh no, I still can't move. And like, no, you can just step back.
See, I didn't watch it like that.
Well, I mean, I did. I mean, I'm just saying that was the problem. Like, I didn't see her as.
Do you know my only major problem with the end of the film?
What?
Is that so throughout the film, there's a lot, or throughout the last half, there's a lot of contrivance of like, oh, I've run to this door and it's locked. Oh, I've run to that door and it's locked. There's padlocks on this one. There's a chain on this one. We need all the electricity on to open this one. Like there was no way to like get out. But first of all, we know that from when the kid was down near the front of the thing, that the monster could quite easily like reach out from that area, which I presume was off his room, because like the very next scene is him in his room, so I can only assume like the monster like leant out the window or something. So when she was in his room, I was wondering, oh, is she going to find that space to crawl out the front? Then she was down underneath the machine, underneath the funhouse, and there was all the machines and the cogs and everything, and it kept showing like this broken grate flapping against the wall, as if that's where she was aiming to get to. Because my understanding was maybe that was the vent that he went through, and maybe that would be her way out. But then, for some reason, like she didn't run to that and get in there, and like she waited for ages, and then his ladder just came slamming down, and then wait a minute, oh, he's in the room as well, which was a bit weak. So I'm like, she had plenty of time to like get to the vent and never did. Then but I forgave it those two things, and then when it was all over and everyone had been like attacked and killed or whatever, and she was just left much like the woman is at the end of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like, you know, clothes torn, absolutely, you know, mentally and emotionally abused and whatever. You see her crawling out of like.
She walks out.
Walks out, right. Of like a slightly broken door at the front where there's an overturned train car, like a train car for a ghost train. And I was like, okay, so when did that happen? And if that was like clearly an opening, why didn't she go? So it was things like that where
you can't.
But I wonder if stuff was cut. That's what I wondered.
Well, I mean, there's
like I wonder if she hadn't. Like maybe there's a scene where she goes to slam the train car like through the door or something, and that's why it's overturned, and that's how she was able to get out. But they just like cut that.
Oh, it's possible for pace. I mean, yeah, maybe. I mean, but I think that underlines another problem, which is that there was no. They were just. The problem was there wasn't an awful lot of momentum in either direction in the end.
No.
There wasn't a lot of momentum of them trying to get out. They just, like, as you say, walked up to doors and went, oh no, it's locked, so we better turn around and go back, kind of thing. It's like, you can't really do that more than once, maybe twice before. It's just like, well, where's your agency? Like, what do you...
Right.
And then the monster would attack, but the monster would attack and it's kind of like...
Plus he had an axe and never once took it to a wall, and the whole thing is built out of wood.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, and there's things like the deaths were... once like quite tricksy, but at the same time not in a particularly satisfying way. Do you know what I mean? Like killing the bloke in the car, that was kind of cool in that it was a surprise. But it was also like, yeah, but was he already dead? Like, it kind of looked like he probably was. And then the girl, like, died, like the girl being confronted by the monster.
No, he wasn't dead because he himself got into the train car.
No,
you saw him, like, stagger up to the train car and get in.
Oh. Well, then that's even worse, frankly, because he didn't say anything. And all he had to do was go, hey, guys, it's me, or whatever.
Right.
Because it's like, you're not gagged or anything. If he was, like, gagged or something.
But you're meant to, well, he had been hung by the neck, like...
Yeah, but even, anyway, well, I mean, I didn't think it was that interesting. But when Blombird's with Monster Guy down in the bottom, and she's doing the... That
was disappointing because there was a massive great fan there and I was like, please stick her face in the fan.
But it was even weirder than that because there was a nice scene where she's like going, oh, I could be nice to you, you wouldn't have to pay me like you did the other girl. You know, like being smart, like this is all I know about you is that you like women and you don't get your rocks off as much as you would like to, and you even give $100 to do it. So I can play on that. And then she stabbed him, and that was okay, that's fine, that's smart-ish. I wouldn't necessarily do it in the back, but okay, his teeth are by your neck. I'd think about the back of the head, but whatever. But then he just like lies on top of her, and the camera only shows both from like the shoulders down.
Yeah.
And you just see some kind of wriggling, and then it cuts.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay, so maybe she's going to end up in some gruesome, whatever, like nailed to a...
She's going to come back.
In some kind of horrible way, like the guy did. But instead it was just like cuts back 5 minutes later, and he's just like going at her with his claws, but again you don't really see anything. And then later you see her, she's got some red lines in her face, going, so that was all for this?
Yeah.
Like, I don't really get what the Funhouse part of it was supposed to do, because it wasn't scary, it wasn't gory, there weren't like interesting set pieces. The monster got progressively less and less frightening and more this is a bit lame, and the whole geography of the place went past confusing and into, well, if you don't care about what this looks like, then why the fuck should I? How is it scary if people keep... There was one scene where she's left on her own, right? And for the first time, he's like, let's use the Funhouse like it's a standard Hollywood film. So you have like, ooh, spooky close-ups of the things in the Funhouse, like as she's looking around. And it's like, yeah, but that doesn't mean anything, because she's just, like, how are these things scaring her at the end of the movie? She's being scared by, obviously, inanimate objects. I know that the guy's, like, mixed up in there, and that's the point, that he, like, looks a bit like the exhibit. But it doesn't do anything. You know what I mean? It's like...
I think there was more to show her mental state, her fragility.
Yeah, but it's in the wrong place. That shouldn't be the final thing of the movie, pretty much. It's just...
well, it was before the final... It wasn't the final thing. It was like... It was the
beginning of the final.
No, it was the everyone else is dead.
Yeah.
We know there's still a monster out there somewhere. She's alone in the Funhouse, and this is our little moment for her to kind of...
But it's the first time he does that. Do you know what I mean? Like that slightly cliched, like...
montage.
Yeah, not that much, but like all the close-up of the spooky things, like being spooky, like laughing at her kind of a thing. And it's the first time he'd like resorted to that in what had been up to that point, realistic things that were as if they would actually happen to people who were on that ride, kind of a thing, which I think is what he was going for. But like, no one goes through like a scary montage thing when they go through it. Right?
No, I mean, I think the biggest, I know what you're saying. I think the biggest.
I don't mean to listen. I don't mean to kick old Tobe when he's dead.
No, it's fine. It's not like. First of all, it's not a film that I'm going to tell people to rush out and go and see. It's not like the lost Tobe Hooper classic, or even the moderately known Tobe Hooper classic. It's worth a view if you are, like I am, prone to like watching a whole bunch of horror stuff throughout the month of October, and you want something that is both like a little familiar but also a little new. It's definitely worth like the 90 minutes, but it's a bit of a slog, and ultimately the worst thing to say about it, because it doesn't have at its time the originality of something like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, even if I don't think that film has aged particularly well. to rest on, is what I mean. Is that ultimately the problem with the film is it doesn't amount to anything. It's not because it doesn't have something like a Halloween or the original Evil Dead or even Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th or any of those things. First of all, we forgive them their slow pace, their initial slow pace, because that was the movie making of the time. The movie making of the time was when you're setting your table, you can take a nice long time to do it. You can show the richness of the woodland that the cabin is in, or you can show the little streets of Haddonfield that Michael is stalking and whatever. Like, you can build something, and you can have time to build something. And we forgive it that because it does slowly draw us in. But the other reason we forgive it that, well, not forgive it that, the reason why we accept that, we don't have to forgive anything because it's good filmmaking, but the reason why we accept that is that those films all generally build to something. Like, they have a climax. Like, there is a beginning and an end, there is an arc for the characters, there are reasons things are happening. And even if essentially in the first Halloween, like, Michael Myers is just the boogeyman, who is the shape, is he human, is he supernatural, what is he, kind of thing. He is rooted in reality by the things around him. He's rooted in reality not just by the people he kills, but by the fact that Dr. Loomis is chasing him. Like, the interesting thing about a Van Helsing or a Dr. Loomis or whatever is they ground whatever the monster they're chasing in some kind of reality and give the thing like a story. Because we, as the audience, can be like, well, we want that person to win. You know what I mean? We want them to get the bad guy at the end. And that's enough of a, like, momentum, and that's enough of a story arc for a horror film to have. Especially when you then fill it with, you know, the Laurie Strodes or the, I forget her name, but the Heather Langenkamp in Nightmare on Elm Street, whatever it is. Like, when you fill it with those... Nancy, yeah. So, that is sort of lacking from here. There is a setup at the beginning. So you have a girl, she has a younger brother who's into the carnival because he's also into horror movies, which allows you to have, like you say, the rip-off Halloween psycho beginning. So he wants to go to the carnival, but she's going to go to the carnival against her father's wishes, and they all go off to the carnival. The little boy sneaks out of his window and follows them. And then there's this whole thing of like, well, the little boy is at the carnival and they're all at the carnival. And here is the carnival, we're going to show you the carnival.
Those two things never really tie together, do they?
But first of all, the two things never really tie together. It allows them, I suppose, to have the idea or the hope of them being saved by the fact that the little kid is in the picture, so maybe he's going to speak up. But then there's this weird audio flashback that when he scared the daughter at the beginning of the movie, the daughter says, I'm going to get you back, you won't know when, you won't know where, but I'm going to get you back like tenfold. And that's almost to indicate that the little boy could say something but isn't, because he thinks the fact that he hasn't seen them come out of the funhouse is her playing a trick on him. So
really, I didn't get that. I thought it was more I mean, maybe that's what they were going for. I thought it was more, he's going to choose not to save her because...
Well, either way, he doesn't say anything. Yeah. So either way, his story arc goes nowhere.
Which okay, so there's two things.
Right? And which it does allow a very effective moment where the fan is going around in her face. She can see her parents getting in the car.
Yeah, that is quite cool.
And she's like screaming at them and they can't hear. But ultimately, what I mean, what I'm saying is... at the end of the day, the movie doesn't really amount to anything beyond 14s go to a Funhouse carnival which happens to have a monster in it. Like, yes, there are comments on, you know, God's creation, and yes, there are comments on family and, you know, what we do, blood is thicker than water and da-da-da-da-da. But really not enough to, you know, carry any sort of great weight. And yes, there is the authentic faces, and you can smell the grease paint and all the rest of it. But like beyond that,
well, I wonder if it wouldn't have been more effective because where I thought it was going to go, with the kid, I thought that the kid might end up, which I think would have been quite neat, because the kid's a big horror fan, right? The kid like grabs a mask and a knife at the beginning of the movie. So I thought what might happen is that the kid's going to go into the Funhouse,
right,
and like essentially rescue them,
right,
by being, you know, a creepy monster,
right,
in the Funhouse, but like on their side kind of thing. And then you could have had a thing about like, well, is he a monster or whatever, something. But anyway, that would have been quite neat if he'd like battled the monster, and if he battled the dad, and if he saved the teens by virtue of being like well versed in horror films and a stomach of iron and a big knife or whatever, like having the Michael at the beginning of Halloween be like a force for good,
right, like a flip.
That could have been kind of cool.
He'll flip you.
He'll flip you for
real.
Flip you for real. Or the other thing I thought might happen is I thought they were gonna, with all the warnings about the carnival by the dad, I thought they were gonna like sleep in the funhouse at night, and then all the carnies in the place were gonna sort of torment and torture and play games with the kids the way that the kids had done the same to them,
right,
kind of throughout the when they were in the park,
when they were laughing at them and insulting
not necessarily
them.
specifically them, but the idea of we put on games for you and now you're the game for us, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think that
then that could have been something. You could have had like the little people, the little glimpses of these people all the way through the movie and what they liked and how they were wronged and the weapons they would use and blah blah blah, and it could have been a real thing there. But he went for something more. It was weird. He tried to almost go for more authenticity. Like, I could see how this would happen. But if you had like a freaky guy working the carnival, which you might have because maybe they're more tolerant of people who they wouldn't put them away. They take
in which case he needed to look more human and less like a big lizard. If he didn't look like a big lizard, if he looked like
no, he looked like the Predator.
Kind of lumpy.
He looked like the albino Predator.
Yes. And if he looked more like a human who had, I don't know, hydrocephalus or something like that, like he had a more like bulbous head or something, or
something that would scare children in a carnival,
right?
But not
that's inhuman. Like you've never seen anyone look like this, and there's no like deformities on the records or whatever.
I feel like the 4-inch fangs were a bit strong.
Right. Yeah.
Because then you're just giving up then, aren't you?
Yeah.
All right, give him huge fangs.
But he looked like a snake, is what he looked like. Not like
a
weird,
I thought he had like the
lizard.
two-headed cow thing going on with the split.
He did slightly, but
it was a mess, really. It was a mess of.
Yeah. So I mean, it's. I'm not unhappy we watched it. There was a lot that I liked about it, but it doesn't hang together because it doesn't have a driving force. And I think that the kid being in it was a way to. He went, well, I'm going to have this period where the 4 adults, kids or teenagers, are going to be going around the carnival. So let's throw the little kid in there to kind of like add tension, because I think he hoped we would be watching the film being like, oh shit, the little kid's like broken out of the house and he's alone in this carnival and what's going to happen to him. He went on the Funhouse ride.
Which was a bit there, but it didn't really add up to anything.
That's what I mean. But I think he's in there to like ratchet up the tension, and it just doesn't play. Like it just didn't. It was more effective to have her being freaked out by the various goings on.
Do you think with something like that, because you've watched a lot of films like this, do you think with something like that sometimes with a movie like this, because obviously like Tobe was not an idiot, but like you're saying, that sometimes things just don't play. You write them down and they make sense to you, like you know what you're doing, but when they're on the screen and you're seeing them, it just doesn't work out.
Right. I agree. I definitely agree.
The After Movie Diner with John Cross will return right after this.
Here's what some people are saying about the Projection Booth podcast.
This podcast takes no shortcut in producing outstanding content. How they haven't become more widely recognized is beyond me.
I love this show. Smart commentary, in-depth interviews, and great production.
It's obvious how serious these guys take their podcast and bring that next level of professionalism that anyone would be hard-pressed to match.
Projection Booth Podcast, with new episodes available every week at projectionboothpodcast.com.
Welcome to the Boondoggle Podcast. My name's Alex.
And I'm Dimitri, and here at the Boondoggle, we're a comedy podcast created by two pals with dark humor to entertain the masses.
Did you just finger guns me when you did that?
Absolutely, Alex.
Why would you do that?
Because finger guns are the most genuine way to get your point across when you're trying to say something absolutely, irrelevant and not believable.
I hate myself. Finger guns.
Finger guns.
He really meant it. This guy's for real.
He's so genuine. Look at this guy. I appreciate that honesty.
It's like, this guy, he's getting a promotion. He's like, what? Oh my god, finger guns the boss. He's like, god damn, you're my boss now.
You're my boss now.
Anyways, tune in to us. You can hear us on a lot of sites: iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, TuneIn, Google Play, anywhere pretty much, and be able to tune in every single Friday to hear what we have to say. Once again, signing off, my name's Alex.
I'm Dimitri.
And this is the Boondoggle Podcast.
You're listening to the sweet sounds of the After Movie Diner. Support us at patreon.com/After Movie Diner. Or I'll punch you in the teats. Rate and review us on iTunes, Earthling.
The other thing that I noticed, there was a conscious choice to not put a lot of music in the movie. There is some music to accent the
but it's
bits
supposed to
at
kind
the
of
end.
background.
But it's supposed to whatever. But I think if you're going to do that, and it's going to be a carnival, then you need the organ music, or you need something like Carney music going on in the background. And this really didn't have sort of anything. There is a soundtrack towards the end where some of the deaths are happening. There are accented dun 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 dun. But there is a way to do a movie like this that would be far more bombastic and far more crazy. And he obviously isn't going for that. And I think that that's a stylistic choice that doesn't necessarily help the film. I think it helps the film in Texas Chainsaw Massacre because the lack of a soundtrack and the lack of...
But there's a lot of noise in Texas Chainsaw
First of all, there's a lot of noise, and secondly, it makes it very, very claustrophobic because it doesn't at any point announce what's going to happen. You just feel trapped in that room with that family and that girl screaming and the people babbling and the bones and the viscera and the weird faces and the smells and all the rest of it. You're just trapped in there with this torment going on with no soundtrack or anything, and that's really unnerving. Whereas with this one,
I didn't feel trapped with them.
That doesn't really work,
because presumably that's like you're saying, that's a part, but he wants us to feel trapped in there with them.
Right.
But a lot of and I think a lot of it is to do with there's no concrete plan to escape.
Right.
So you don't feel because the thing about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is it's a bit of a maze. It's you don't.
It's not that she's chained down.
Yeah, well, true, but still, it's also it's a big enough house that you don't know which doors are going to lead where, or you can be genuinely
right.
What's the word? Disorientated in a house enough that you could be lost in it. But I didn't feel like that was it. They kept seemingly wandering past the same three things the whole time.
Yeah.
So it's a bit difficult to be just stop and get. I mean, even the bit where he saw them through the slats in the roof, they just stayed there.
Yeah.
Going, well, what should we do now? Kind of a thing. He's coming. Clearly, he knows where you are. So why aren't you hiding or formulating a plan or running for it? But they just sit there.
Yeah.
Because it's well, there's only that place. Presumably he must have filmed it in a real. I mean, maybe it falls down because he decided to film it in a real funhouse, which is why.
Except that the thing with the big gorilla face and the green light and all that was clearly a studio. That wasn't.
Well, that's true.
So I don't know.
So maybe he didn't have the budget. I don't know. But I mean, it didn't feel. And I can't believe it can't be difficult to film a funhouse in a way that is like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, disorientating. We don't know where anything leads.
And I think that it was, the most effective bit, although there is even problems with that. The most effective bits were either the bit that took place in the monster's bedroom, because that was a clearly defined space, or the downstairs gears and cranks and all that,
which was cool, but just wasn't used very well.
No, but it was at least a place where you're it was at least a place where all the noises of all the machinery and all the things.
Yeah, that bit when she actually first
kind
went
of
down
accentuated
there, and she
the
was,
horror of it.
Yeah, and when she first went down there and she was moving between, and you realised what these were, but this was the mechanics of the stuff above it.
Right.
It was like, this is interesting. We're in an interesting space now, and then she was kind of out of it really quickly.
Right.
And there wasn't like a feeling of a maze or things to be avoided or I don't know, plans to be made. She was just like sometimes when you get to that point of a movie where you've just got a blank, you know, frightened, ineffective, you know, last girl standing thing. It's a bit like, so, like, I don't really know her.
And
she
wasn't really a final girl in the sense of someone who's going to like pick up an axe and fight her way out. She was someone who.
His death was pretty late too. I mean, she hit him a couple of times with the bar.
Right.
He grabs the bar and then falls backwards, and the bar. She didn't even like push the bar into the electric thing or push him. You know, like he grabbed the bar and then accidentally hit the thing and electrocuted himself. Like there was no.
Right. Yeah, it was weird, and also like sometimes the electrics were working in the funhouse and sometimes they weren't, and some bits were on and some bits weren't.
That's the problem, I think. I think he
got
into that space with a firm plan of using the space and the things within it, and that's what he was going to make his movie about, and that's what was going to be scary, he's going to keep it real, and that's what's going to be frightening. He's going to put people actually inside the funhouse where things would be happening, and that would be scary enough. But I think he got in there and he thought, this isn't going to work. And so that's why there's all, you know, you're moving around between spaces and the electrics are on and then they're off and then pretending that these things are much more dangerous than they really are. Lots of stuff like that. But to be positive about it, I did enjoy the bit at the beginning. I enjoyed the bit when they were going around the carnival, and it was weird and creepy. And I liked the experience of being there with them, and they didn't seem like they weren't obnoxious either. They weren't irritatingly unbelievable or like obnoxiously. Oh, I can't wait to see their heads get ripped off. They were just kind of like ordinary kids.
Right.
Even the perm, you know, glasses, who should have been really irritating, wasn't like particularly irritating. He was just like a bit goofy, but they were all kind of relatable. They were all
fine.
And so going around the car with them was all right. It just all fell apart for me when they got to the funhouse.
I'm definitely with you though. It would have been nice. Like that's the other thing. I think coming away from it, the feeling of a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you had all those carnies, you had all those faces, you had all those characters, and beyond their carnival roles, you didn't really do anything with them.
No.
So, there could have been a really great movie to have been made, like with all the carnies getting together and da-da-da-da-da. Like that's the genuine, especially if all you want to do is a torture the teens kind of finale, which is all this was.
It wouldn't have been difficult to do it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So like, yeah, it's a little bit of a missed opportunity. It's a little bit like unsure of what it really wants to be, and there's no like big driving force and or climax to speak of. But there are some really nice bits in it. It is really nicely filmed. And like I said at the beginning, I really did feel like he was playing with a few themes that seemed to be reoccurring and in his wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, actually, that Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which he directs much later on, has a similar, like, Carnival Funhouse thing ending, but it's like the Carnival Funhouse of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre family have moved into a closed down fun fair, and so there's all this like butcher bones and blood and everything craziness with
he's got a history,
the whole carnival
or
thing.
something with like carnivals or fun fairs, because there was too much of either like he went to one and it was a really formative experience, or he's fascinated by them or something. But because presumably to go back to Texas Chainsaw Massacre like years later, like he did, would have to be like, well, if I'm going to do this, I want to really do it. I want to be interested in what I'm doing. So for that, and the way that this was filmed at the beginning, and the idea of doing something in a fun house but trying to make it real is like his first scary experience was on a fun house, or I don't know, something, but like he's clearly drawn. It wasn't like an idle curiosity. I mean, it was like, I want to take you to this place.
Either that, or so many people talk about horror movies being like the cinematic roller coaster, meaning
yeah, that's true. Like
they scare you, they whiz you about, they're dangerous, but essentially you come out alive and well.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe he's just like, well, I'll go, instead of the metaphor, I'll just go
all out
for it.
Yeah,
and I think what's interesting is you put this and Texas Chainsaw together, add a coked up Dennis Hopper and a crazy guy with a metal skull, and you've got Texas Chainsaw 2, sort of.
Kind of makes me want to watch that now.
You've never seen it?
No.
Texas Chainsaw 2 is definitely like the most sort of bombastic 80s, early 90s that Tobe Hooper kind of gets. I think he gets more so in his later career, but like it's certainly where he's abandoned any attempt at realism, and it's all a bit kind of glossy and crazy.
Right.
But there we go. That is our first Horrotober.
Horrotobe
Hooper.
Horrotobe Hooper.
Horrotobe Hooper. No. Episode.
No.
And it was fun. It was nice.
I enjoyed it.
That was a fun house.
I did really enjoy watching it, and even though I thought the end bit was a bit disappointing, I still enjoyed, like, the machines underneath the funhouse. That's something I won't forget. Like, that's a memorable image.
Right.
I liked the way the carnival barker spoke to her. I liked the way that it looked. I liked the experience of being there. Like, I'm kind of fascinated by those places and those things too. So I did really enjoy watching. I think I feel the same way as you. I think it was just a bit of a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
That's all. And I don't think it was his fault. I think he set himself a high bar to try and make that film without whiz-bangery, but to try and actually just use a funhouse to make the scares happen. And I think he knew, or he just couldn't pull it off.
It did weirdly make me want to be a carny.
That was not my experience.
Like, I kind of wish.
Out of that thinking, well, I wish I was a grubby, unshaved lunatic on
Look
the
at me.
fringes of society. Oh yeah, that's what you are. That's right.
I'm a grubby, unshaved.
You may as well like be with other
grubby, unshaved lunatics.
Yeah.
And not in a sort of coffee house in Brooklyn way, but in a sort of
actual,
old kind of ramshackle
I do not own a razor
caravan.
because I'm too poor and mad.
I want to live in a caravan.
Why?
I don't know, like just be a gypsy for a while.
Didn't you go on holiday in a caravan at some point?
No, but not like a gypsy caravan. It was like a trailer home,
like an old-fashioned
Isle of
Wolfman.
Wight. No. It was a trailer home in the Isle of Wight.
No, but I'm saying what you're talking about is you want like a painted gypsy, Wolfman curse wagon kind of thing.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I want to live in a place with like curtains and beads and bangles and glass balls and old.
Does your fiance know this?
And people who are like midgets and lumpy people and like women with beards and all that kind of stuff. I'm fascinated by it.
Fair enough. I can see you with like a tatty red velvet cut like suit.
Yeah.
And some kind of weird crazy top hat.
And I just do like the card game stall or something, or I do the shoot the duck in the face.
I definitely
stall.
think you're more of a barker. I think you're of a guy standing outside a tent yelling at people to go in.
To go into the two-faced...
Yeah. And that's how you market the diner, basically. You just stand, do you know what I mean, outside the diner, on the internet, and just yell at people.
Yell about... and let's be fair, we are kind of like a two-headed cow.
That's true.
So we are kind of like the freaks. Come behind the curtain and see the freaks.
Listen to the freaks talk. Listen to the freaks speculate.
Listen to the listen to the speculation of the outsider freaks.
That could be the new tagline for the diner.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, another episode is ended.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, dude.
From the slab began to rise. Suddenly, to my surprise, he did the mash. He did the monster mash. The monster mash. It was a graveyard smash. It caught on in a flash. The monster mash. He did monster mash. From the hall of gore in the castle east to the master bedroom where the vampires feast. The ghouls all came from their humble abodes to get a jolt from my electrode. They did the monster mash. It was a graveyard smash. It caught on in a flash. They did the monster mash. The zombies were having fun. The party had just begun. The guests included Wolfman, Dracula, and his son. The brain surgeons were all digging the sounds. Igor on chains, backed by his baying hounds. The poodle stabbers were about to arrive with their vocal group, the Crypt Kicker 5. They did the monster mash. It was a graveyard smash. It caught on in a flash. They did the monster mash. Come in, Boris. We always have a guest for breakfast. Come in, Horace. We always have a breast for breakfast. Igor, have you watered the brains today, Igor? Igor?